Hello and welcome to the special support section of Melee's Turn Wheel, where today we're going to be talking about the esteemed Knights of Pherae, including Marcus, Lowen, Isadora, and Harken. These guys are okay. We're getting close to the end here on the SSS episodes. We have 3 episodes left, I think, including this one. And then I'm probably going to do something separate for the Lords as well. So I want to try to, I really want to try to get... Wait, no, that can't be right. Hold on, give me a second. No, it's 3 after this one, so we have 4 left, including this one. So I'm going to try to get through these relatively quickly. I want to try to put out, a few episodes in relatively quick succession here so that I could try to at least make good progress towards finishing FE7 by, around the holidays. I don't know that I'm going to get all the way there, but I think I can get pretty close as long as I lock in. So we're going to do that. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about these guys. We're going to start with Marcus. Let's talk about Marcus. So Marcus supports with 5 characters. He supports with Eliwood, Merlinus, Lowen, Isadora, and Harken. And most of his supports are fine. I don't love any of them a lot. I like his Eliwood one a fair bit. I think they lean in a little bit too heavily in the Eliwood one into like self-referential, like knowing that FE6 comes next. There's like there's a moment in here where where Marcus is like, oh well, I've served alongside your father, I'm serving alongside you, and when you have a son, I'll serve alongside him as well. Except they phrase it like more awkwardly than that, and it feels very like, hey guys, do you know that we know that FE6 exists? I don't really like the way that was like, I get why they would do something like that, but I just feel like it was worded a little awkwardly, and I feel like that could have been done a little bit smoother. But overall, the Eliwood support is pretty good. It shows off an element of Marcus's character that is not... all of these supports, I feel like, show off a different perspective of Marcus to an extent. That might be a little bit generous, especially to the Merlinus support. But it's, for Eliwood, it's he's very... He's, for lack of a better word, he's vulnerable. He opens up to Eliwood very easily. He's like openly proud of him. I think he cry at some point. I think he looks like he's about to cry in the A support, maybe, or maybe he does. I'm not sure. Anyway, he's just so overcome with loyalty for Eliwood, which is great. Marcus is cool. And his loyalty to Eliwood, and of course, his loyalty to all of Pherae alongside Roy as well in the next game, or in the previous game, I guess. It's noteworthy. I do think that this has a fair bit to say about Eliwood, but I'm going to save that for another time. The Merlinus support is a little bit boring. To be honest, I always used to like this support, not necessarily the content of the support, but the implication that the support exists. So there's a long running I don't know if like debate is the right word. It's like how do I word this? So the concept of Jagans, right? The concept of Jagans, as I've explained a few times, are that they're very strong, but that they tend, at least on paper, to be worse in the long term. So many people, especially people who are newer to Fire Emblem, make the decision to put their Jagans on the bench as the game goes on, so that they don't, quote-unquote, waste experience, and instead give that experience to characters who are going to get better level ups and have more long-term success. Now, obviously, the issue with that is that Jagans tend to be pretty good even into the mid and late game, and that experience on them is not necessarily wasted. But that is the mentality that a lot of players have. And I also think, to an extent, it is the mentality that you are intended to have. I think the fact that so many Jagans are strong late into the game is more of an oversight, like a design flaw, than anything else. I think the developers of at least some of these games absolutely intended you to bench some of your Jagans. And I think this is actually one of the strongest pieces of evidence for that. Because if you think about where Merlinus is, right? Especially in the early game when you first get him, he's not going to have his cart. Instead, he's going to be, in a position usually near your back lines, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time with him next to Marcus, to get the support. So it's kind of feels like it's encouraging you to be like, hey, because he's a Jagan, because you don't want to give him too much experience, leave Marcus behind to defend Merlinus, and you can build the support at the same time. And of course, that's a fun idea. If that's what they were going for, I could be wrong, because he also supports with Vida and Nino, who do not have this implication about them. Although, to be fair, both Nino and Vida join at the point where Merlinus will almost certainly be a wagon, or at least very close to being a wagon. So there's that. Anyway, the content of the actual support is not that good. There's a part here that I like where Merlinus makes some puddings and encourages Marcus to try one, and Marcus eats it, and he has like a very sophisticated set of things to say about this pudding. He's apparently a little bit of a confectionery, which does actually tie in to the next support, which is the Lowen support. I might save Lowen for last, because I think Lowen might be my favorite out of these guys. It's hard to say. I don't actually love most of these guys, to be completely honest. This is kind of a little bit of a dull set of characters, in my opinion, but your mileage may vary. Anyway, I think I'm going to move on for the Marcus Merlinus support. I don't have much else to say. I mean, the A support just reaffirms what we already know, which is that like Merlinus is like, hey, the lords are so young. Is it really, do you have any concerns that they're going to make the wrong choices? And Marcus says, no, I have complete loyalty in them, which is kind of like, we know. It's not really like anything interesting. But you can argue that this is maybe the canon A support for Marcus, because the implication here is that this is what kind of drives Merlinus to later sign up to be a member of House Pherae, not a member, but like a servant of House Pherae, and be alongside Roy in FE6. Well, otherwise, I feel like there's nothing much else to say about this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a dull support. Yeah, okay, so I kind of misspoke, or misremembered. So a lot of Lowen's supports are about food. That's like his gimmick, is that he loves food, he likes making food, he loves eating food, he has like a lot of emergency rations, and he is very invested in making sure that people are well fed on the battlefield, so that they aren't fighting on low energy. Which is cool, that's good for him. His Marcus support isn't very much about food at all, though, which is kind of a missed opportunity. Now that we know that Marcus is a confectionery, I think that's the word. Am I using that word right? I think so. A gourmand, I guess you could say. What is the word that Merlinus uses? Epicure is what Merlinus uses, which is not a word that I'm familiar with, but I think gourmand is another word for it. The fact that like this is maybe the one Lowen support that doesn't have a lot to do with food is like a little bit disappointing. I don't know. Maybe, like, it's not like a great gimmick or anything. But if you were gonna use it anywhere, I feel like it could have been used to better effect here than in some of his other places. Anyway, the actual content of the support is Marcus just being like really tough on Lowen to make him a strong knight. And I have a fair bit to say about the support, but not really until we get to Lowen. I think this support is pretty cool for Lowen, especially in relation to his other supports. But as far as Marcus goes, I mean, it just like I was saying, it kind of demonstrates an aspect of his character that is not really explored at all in the Eliwood support, which is that he can be like a very grueling training instructor. He is technically above like the highest. I think he's like literally the highest rank member of the Pherae like army at all. So he's above Harken, he's above Isadora, and he's definitely above Lowen, who's like sort of a new knight. And he is a merciless slave driver of a training instructor. But by the end, it pays off. Lowen is doing pretty well, and he gives him some praise. The Isadora support is so fucking boring. I don't dislike Isadora as a character. I don't even know if she's my least favorite out of this group. But she's like this support specifically is so boring. The C support is just nothing. The C support is just absolutely fucking nothing. The B support is they talk about Eliwood a little bit, and she just is like, yeah, I'm gonna be a good loyal knight of Pherae or whatever. The A support, they start to touch on a little bit of like a story here, where she's grateful that Marcus has never treated her differently for being a woman, which is, something that is definitely noteworthy. And I feel like that could be an interesting angle for a support. They actually tackled this concept already. It was I believe the Cecilia and Douglas support from FE6, which wasn't an amazing support either in my opinion, but it had this similar concept, and I feel like they fleshed it out a lot more. I don't actually remember if it was in more than one support conversation, one of the three that this was like brought up. But even if it wasn't, I distinctly remember them like doing more with it than they do here. Basically, she just says thanks. It's the fourth to last line of the support where she says this. So it feels like it comes out of nowhere. There's no room for it to like go anywhere. I don't know. It's not a very good support chain in my opinion. They just don't. This is not interesting. It is noteworthy that he is significantly nicer to Isadora than he is to Lowen. Although I think that probably is more to do with the fact that she has already like grown and matured into a strong knight, rather than her being a woman. I think this is probably how he's going to interact with Lowen once he gets a little bit more under his belt. And then finally we have the Harken support. The Harken support is kind of interesting. So we're going to see more of this when we get to Harken, but a lot of Harken's supports revolve around this idea, or this fact, I guess, that he essentially he blames himself for Elbert's death, or at the very least, he thinks that the fact that Elbert died is like a stain on his honor and as his abilities as a knight. And he goes through like kind of a bunch of feelings about that in various support chains. In this one, though, they basically, not completely, but they basically resolve that for him here in the C support. They talk about it a little bit, and I think more than any of his other support partners that I can remember, I have to take another look at his supports to refresh my memory. But more, at least as far as I can remember, Marcus is the support partner that he is most able to process this with, and move on from with. I mean, he can still bring it up, I guess, in his C supports of other people. I just thought that aspect was interesting. The rest of the support is a little bit mixed. It's not that it's mixed. I do like the rest of the support. It's just I feel like they could have done more with it. They talk a little bit about Harken's past, but they don't really go into any real detail about it. I'm just gonna read the support. It's easier to read it, I think, than to try to explain. So it starts off with Harken, and Harken says, "I was wondering if Lord Eliwood knew, if he knew where I was and what I did before I came to Sir Pherae." Marcus says, "He surely does not know the details, yet why would your past have anything to do with you now? You rode alone into the enemy camp and killed their general. Your skills in battle have done Pherae great aid. Sir, the house you once served is no more. The Marquess that betrayed your loyalty and threw you out is dead. You are a knight of Pherae. Lord Eliwood is a pure man. If he knew my past, would he still welcome me? It is unlike you to say such foolish things, Harken. Why do you think you stand here now? For whom do you swing your sword, if not for Lord Eliwood?" So I want to know more about that, I guess. And it's not even like they don't have to go into a ton more detail. I guess my biggest thing is that was a little hard to follow for me. Like, I don't fully know what's being said there. The best I got is that like he was a knight of another territory who then betrayed him and then tossed him out like garbage. This doesn't come up in any of his other fucking supports, as far as I'm aware. And then possibly he then sided with Pherae in a fight against this other guy and then killed their general. I'm not really sure. Nothing there was like super why would he not want Eliwood to trust him? Or why would he think that Eliwood might not trust him if he found out about this? I don't fully get it. The best I got, again, is that he maybe betrayed, not betrayed, like the other person betrayed him, and then he fought against them, and maybe he's worried that Eliwood's going to see that as in a bad light. So I'm not really sure, but it's kind of interesting. I would have liked to know more, but it is what it is. And then the A support just kind of affirms how loyal Harken and Marcus both are to Eliwood. I like this support, like the A support. I think it's a nice arc. I think all of the supports kind of make this nice arc where it's really about, unlike I feel like is the Isadora support that like touches on this a little bit but doesn't really go anywhere meaningful with it. I feel like this support is really about like Marcus really reaffirming like how much Harken loves Eliwood and is loyal to Eliwood. So I don't know. I thought it was nice, but it wasn't like anything super interesting and nothing to write home about, I guess. All right, that's about all I have to say about Marcus. I feel like this episode's gonna go by pretty quickly because I can like most of those support partners are like who all we just talked about. So as this goes on, we're gonna be seeing we're gonna be able to speed through a lot of these supports. I don't have to summarize them as thoroughly. Let's do Lowen next. So Lowen is like, again, possibly my favorite character. I have to like go through and like refresh my memory on the other ones, but I think Lowen has like, in my opinion, the most resembling like a layered, interesting character, which is kind of funny because he's more of a gimmick guy than a lot of other FE7 characters are, but I still think they do some interesting stuff with him. So the Eliwood support, Lowen is just like doting on Eliwood, making sure that he's doing okay. He says something here that's funny. He says, "If the stomach is empty, empty too lies the heart," which he claims is a proverb that is fairly well known. But Eliwood has no idea what he's talking about. It's remarkably similar to something that he says in the Marcus support, or sorry, something that Marcus says to him in his support with Lowen, which is, what does he say? Fill your heart, but first fill your belly. So I feel like maybe Lowen is just misremembering that line that Marcus gave to him, and passing it off as his own, or just, again, just misremembering, misspeaking, whatever. But I think it summarizes Lowen's character very well. He's very preoccupied with making sure that everybody's at maximum fighting capacity, which means making sure that people are eating, right? Which is fair enough. And the rest of the support is basically just like, Eliwood realizes that Lowen cooks a lot of the food, and like Eliwood is very impressed by that, and gives him praise. And Lowen talks a little bit about the history that his I guess his dad was the chef to Eliwood's grandfather, I guess. Yeah. And so there's like a history and a tradition here of making sure that that the Marquesses of Pherae are well fed. Okay, so the Marcus support, I think, is a little bit more interesting from Lowen's perspective, because I think it ties into he has a lot of I don't know if self-image issues are the right word, but like his interactions with the three other knights. I forgot to say who he supports with. It's Eliwood, Marcus, Isadora, Harken, and Rebecca. His interactions with all of these knights kind of bring out a different piece of his perception of how he views himself as a knight of Pherae. Marcus is very hard on him, and he feels like that's justified because he's still, and Marcus is saying as much, and Lowen fully agrees. He's like, I'm just like, I'm a weak, pathetic knight. I'm just barely starting out. I'm not good enough. I need to train. I need to do all I can all the time. Otherwise I'm never going to become a strong knight. Whereas in his Isadora support, Isadora, assures him that he's a fine knight. I think he says, was it in the C support? It's in the B support. I'm not even close. He says, I'm not even close to the level of you and the others. And like, she says that that's ridiculous, and she thinks that she thinks that he might actually be stronger than her right now. Or at least like on par with her, able to match her in some ways. So I think, in case it wasn't obvious, that kind of demonstrates that Marcus is maybe not being too hard on him because it seems to be working, right? So I'm not gonna question his methods, but he's definitely like not giving Lowen as much credit as he probably deserves. Not that I think Marcus like doesn't think that he's a good knight. I think that he's just like saying that to get him like hyped up and motivated. But you know what I mean. There is a bit here in the Isadora support that I don't fully understand. Basically, Lowen asks if she's hungry, and she says yes. And he offers her some emergency rations, and she says we shouldn't eat like this, like out in the middle of a battlefield. And then he says, "Are you sure it's not because of Lord Harken?" Um, and then she says no, and then changes the subject. I have no fucking idea what that's supposed to mean. I don't know why he says that. I don't fully get that one. Presumably, the support can be acquired before Harken rejoins. So when they think he's still dead, and they probably, maybe this has something to do with that, but they didn't want to say like, oh, is it because you miss Harken or something like that? That also wouldn't make sense, but it would maybe make a little bit more sense because I would understand what they're like trying to go for, what they're trying to say. But obviously, if you do get the support after recruiting Harken, then that wouldn't work. So I don't know. That just feels like a weirdly out of place bit of dialogue there. And then the A support is just them being like, "Yep, we sure are Knights of Pherae, and we're cool and we're good." This support is like kind of whatever. I'm not huge on it. There's an Isadora support that I really like that we're gonna get to. I think we'll do Isadora last, but both because I think she has like some of the better supports for most of these guys, but then also because she has the most supports out of anybody else. So next up is the Harken support. We find out a little bit of Lowen's inspiration to become a knight in this support. He says, "I was born to peasants. My home was a small village far outside Pherae, a village with little value, far from the site of the castle. We were so poor there was hardly any value to be gained by protecting us from bandits. All knew this for certain. Still, he came to protect us, his subjects." The way the conversation is written, it heavily implies that Harken is the one who came and protected his village. So that's Harken was a big part of Lowen's inspiration to become a knight altogether. And as I said, Harken is kind of hung up in the support about not being able to protect Elber. We'll talk more about that when we get to him. But he says that like Lowen was able to pull him out of his like stupor and remind him that like at this point the most important thing is that they protect Eliwood together. And then he tops it off by complimenting Lowen and says that he's like a fine knight. Although he does say that you need to go without food for a little while, which is kind of a comedy bit to end the support on. But it is nice that like with Isadora, he's getting a very genuine compliment from a superior. In stark contrast to Marcus, who's like, no, you need to do this, that, and that, or else you'll never be a true knight or whatever. It's just kind of funny. All right, last but not least, we have the Rebecca support, which is his only paired ending. These guys do end up together if you ace support them, and I do like their dynamic. I think it's pretty cute. It is pretty funny. I like it from Rebecca's perspective. I think we already did her SSS episode. I don't know if I really talked about this, but like her kind of reminiscing about how things happened, except remembering them to be more exciting and more heroic. And when Lowen tries to correct her, to sort of downplay himself. In his typical fashion, he's a very humble guy. Rebecca says, "No, I like to remember it this way better. So don't correct me, please," which I think is quite funny. The B support is also really nice. She compliments him on he's downplaying himself. He says, I'm nothing but a burden to Lord Eliwood, and Rebecca says, "No, you're amazing, you're great." Which I think is it kind of ties into like again we see this thing over and over again where like different like he's very hard on himself because Marcus is very hard on him, but like when anybody who doesn't have stake in that is like just kind of evaluating him honestly and genuinely, they're like, "No, dude, you're pretty cool actually, you're kind of the GOAT low key." So and I like that for him. I also like that she gives him food, which is obviously this ties into his other big character trait, I think these two work really well together. I enjoy their dynamic. The A support unfortunately drops the ball. It's mostly for comedy. He talks a little bit about how he's like family has passed, and he doesn't want to lose another person that he cares about, which of course leads to, oh, I didn't know you cared about me, whatever. But then they say like, oh, well, this premonition that you have, it's just the rumbling in your stomach or something like that. But I think the first couple of supports work really well. I also like this parallel in Lowen's character where Harken used to come and save his village from bandits. And then now he gets to be in the position where he is that person for somebody else, which I think is, it's sweet. I like it a fair bit. It's not a lot, but I think it has more going on. I think Lowen's whole character has more going on than a lot of what these other guys do. I enjoy Lowen a fair bit. I just think he's nice. He's a cool guy. Okay, moving on to Harken. Harken supports with Eliwood, Isadora, Lowen, Marcus, and Vida. Eliwood support. This whole thing is just them going back and forth about how, like, Harken's like, hey, Eliwood, you shouldn't be fighting. You should be letting us fight for you. And Eliwood's like, no, I have my own reasons for fighting. I can't let other people fight my battles for me, etc., etc. And then it comes to a head with him being like, I couldn't protect your father. I want to make sure that I protect you. But they come to a mutual understanding where, like, Eliwood understands, like, hey, I realize I'm kind of being selfish by asking you to just allow me to fight. And Harken says, well, I'm also being selfish by not letting you fight. So they come to an agreement that they're going to stand by each other and they're going to make sure that they get through this no matter what. Which is nice. I think the way that conflict for Harken resolves here is pretty interesting. So the Isadora support is, so these guys are romantic interests. They actually were together prior to the events of the game. They were going to get married before all this shit happened with Elbert and the whole the events of the game happened. And they don't really do too much here though. That's interesting. The C and B supports are basically just the same, of her being like, I was really sad when you were gone. I really wish that I was so worried about you when you disappeared. And she's worried that he's gonna disappear on her again. Which is fine, that's all good. The problem is that they could have done that in one support, and instead it's basically dragged out over two, which is unfortunate. The A support is more of the same thing, except now they say that they're gonna, once this is all over, they're gonna get married. So it's nice, it's fine. But it's not anything to write home about, which is sad because I think romantic supports have the potential to be really cool. I wish I got more of a sense of their dynamic as a couple instead of it just being about her being really sad, and / being like happy that he's back / being worried that he's going to disappear again. So I don't know. I feel like they didn't do as nearly as much as they could, in my opinion. All right, Lowen. I think we already talked about this one, and I don't think this is super interesting for Harken. I think him being very deep in his thoughts about what happened with Elbert, him feeling very self-conscious about the fact that he wasn't able to help Elbert. He feels like he's not a true knight anymore because he let Elbert die. And Lowen, telling him his inspirational story of why Lowen decided to become a knight because of Harken, kind of pulls him out of that and makes him feel a little bit better. So that's pretty much all that's going on there. But I like the way that it resolves in this as well. That's the other thing about the Isadora support, is that I don't feel like it resolves that aspect of Harken's inner conflict at all. They barely even talk about Elbert in that one, which feels really weird. There could have been a really easy solution here where he's like, I don't feel like I have, I'm not worthy of being a knight anymore. I'm not worthy of being your husband because of the mistake I made. And they could have talked about that, but it doesn't do that for some reason. It just seems like such a slam dunk. I'm not even saying that would have been great necessarily, but it would have been better than what we got probably. Yeah, and then in the Marcus support, as I said, he gets over it pretty quickly because he redirects that conflict, that sadness over not saving Elbert, he directs that instead towards, now that there's nothing we can do about Elbert anymore, but Eliwood is here. Eliwood is something we can do something about. So let's work to protect him. And that's enough to get Harken motivated again. They do talk about it a little bit more in the Ace support, but it's basically just reaffirming basically what I just said. Where Eliwood was his main motivation for breaking out of the stupor. All right, and then finally the Vita support. I actually think I forgot to read this one when looking over these previously somehow. So let me do that now, I guess. This is like one of the few Vita supports that really like delves into Vita's character. I like it for Harken as well. I think Harken here sees a little bit of himself in Vita. I mean, they talk a little bit about how he saw her interacting with Sonia and felt and like her motivation to repeal the mistakes that she had made. He was jealous of how motivated she was. Considering that he had basically lost his will to live. So it's neat. That's really all I have to say about it, though. It's cool. I like it. I like it for Harken. I think it does more for Vita, so I'm going to spend more time talking about it when we get to Vita. And now finally we are moving on to Isadora, who has 7 support partners. She has Legault, Lowen, Marcus, Harken, Geitz, Renault, and Sane. Now, most of these we can kind of blast through because I've already talked about them a fair bit. Isadora and Marcus is extremely boring. Isadora and Lowen isn't particularly great either for her, at the very least. Isadora and Harken is quite boring. I like Isadora and Geitz. It doesn't really say that much about her character, in my opinion. I think it definitely says a lot more about Geitz. But I like her chemistry with Geitz in this one. I think her dialogue is written well. It helps to like give sense of her personality that the other 3 did not, in my opinion. I don't know. I think this is just a nice, cute, well written support. Even if it doesn't give me a lot to chew on in terms of her character. And then the Sane support is I like this for Isadora because she kind of like takes his flirting in stride. She doesn't like reciprocate it at all. But she takes that energy and uses it for something productive. Where they grow closer as like friends and as fellow knights of their respective territories. Which is cool. I like that for her. But there's it's not a lot of so many. I feel like I'm kind of being a broken record. But it really is just a matter of fact. A lot of these supports are very much in the realm of, yeah, they're cool, they're all right, they're nice, but I don't have much else to say about most of them. We do, however, have 2 more supports now from Isadora that are both, in my opinion, pretty interesting. So let's start with the Legault support. This one's nice for Isadora. Ironically, I actually think this is one of Legault's weaker supports from what I remember anyway. But it's still pretty good. Legault is just like one of the best characters in the game. But as far as Isadora goes, this support is pretty good for her. Essentially, she's interacting with Legault, and she has she has an idea in her mind of what the Black Fang assassins would be like, what they would look like, what they would act like, how they would fight. And her and Legault just have this fun back and forth dynamic where he's like challenging her preconceived notions. Like he's trying to downplay himself, like, I'm super weak. We have to use trickery and outnumber our opponents and use subterfuge to win in a battle of straight fists or a battle of raw strength. Most of us would lose. But Isadora understands that there's probably a little bit more going on behind the scenes than that, and is trying to sort of figure out what makes Legault tick, and I like their dynamic here a fair bit. The Ace support I really like as well because it he opens up about his history with the Black Fang, and explains how, despite the fact that they were assassins, despite the fact that they did a job that a lot of people would consider, very dishonorable, the dynamic that they had as a group was fun, and it was they took pride in what they were doing because they were doing it for the right reasons. And in that sense, Legault says that this army that he's a part of now reminds him of the Black Fang, and Isadora listens to all that and kind of realizes that maybe she's misjudged both Legault and the sort of the Black Fang as a whole, which is just a nice learning moment for her. I wish that they did more with it. Again, it's not all the way there, but I think it gets closer than a lot of her other supports do to being like a full, like, fleshed out arc for her character. So last but not least, in fact, last and probably best, this might be my favorite support of the episode. Quite honestly, we have the Isadora and Renault support. Which is great. I mean, again, Renault, he kind of just whatever he touches turns to gold. Same with Legault. Renault and Legault are just both very good characters. Essentially, the main thrust of the support is that the C support is just them sort of like introducing each other, like and learning about each other. And then in the B support, she asks Renault if she can confess. He's a priest. For those of you who don't know, I guess. He asks if she asks if she can confess her sins. He doesn't think that he's really the right person for the job because, like, technically he is a priest, but he's not, like, he has such a checkered past and is not like he doesn't feel like he's worthy of being a confessional priest. But she insists and he says okay. What she says to him is that she feels a certain uneasiness about killing, essentially. Like, she knows and she believes in her cause. She believes that they're fighting and killing for the right reason, but that, knowing that there are real human lives being cut short by her actions, it doesn't sit right with her fully. And she wants to be like, essentially, I don't think she's doing this consciously necessarily, but the implication here, especially in the A support, which we'll talk about in a minute, is that she's essentially looking for validation. She's looking for someone to say, no, you're doing what you need to do. You're doing your duty. You got to do what you got to do. And don't even worry about it, man. Don't even worry about it. That's what she wants, I think. And in a lot of other supports, that is exactly what would happen. If she had this conversation with, like, Marcus or Eliwood, or any of the other Pherae knights, or even just like most characters in general, they'd assure her. They'd be like, hey, you're doing what you need to do. There's no shame in fighting to protect a cause that you care about, which is fair. That's accurate. I don't even disagree with that sentiment. But what the A support does instead is it takes it in a direction that I really like. At the end of the B support, he hears her saying all this and says, this is not something that I can offer advice to you on, and he leaves. The A support, he's come back with some thoughts that he's had since the last time that they talked. And what he says to her is that it's okay to not have an answer to the question that you asked me. It's okay to have doubts, because if you were the type of person that was completely comfortable killing people, even for a good reason, then that would like make you kind of a monster in a sense, And he says it's good to have these doubts about your actions, because it means that every life. He doesn't say this part explicitly, but it really reads like, he's saying, as long as, if you are thinking about your actions through this lens of like, am I doing the right thing? Then you're never going to let yourself become too detached from, too desensitized to the act of killing. And this is obviously a really direct reflection of his own feelings on the situation. I mean, he even says as much. He says, I have lived this way since I found myself. Some are sustained by faith, but for me, there are no answers. Which is really powerful, and Renault is such a good character, and I can't wait to talk about him. Unfortunately, he is going to be in the last SSS episode that we do, because he's the very last character in the game to join, only joining in basically the penultimate chapter. But yeah, I'm excited to get to him. But I think this is also Isadora's best support. I think that she, it definitely, like, Renault kind of steals the show here, unfortunately. But I do think that her perspective on all this is interesting as well. And the paired ending, I haven't really talked about most of the paired endings. There are a couple. I think she has one with Harken. Well, obviously she has one with Harken. She has one with Legault as well, actually. But it's not really like impactful at all in my opinion. The Isadora Renault paired ending, It says, Renault simply vanished after the battle. Isadora, now alone, returns to Pherae as a member of the Imperial Guard. Years later, she entered the service of Elimine, hoping to find answers in the clergy. So, you can see that he didn't take his advice like completely literally. She's still looking for answers, but there's nothing. That she realized that there's nothing wrong with that, and that she seems to be a little bit more comfortable, living with that doubt, than maybe she was previously, or maybe it ended up being too much for her, which is why she quit. I don't know, but we'll never know the answer to that question. But I think I like the way that the note that this conversation ends off on, and the implications that it has for both Renault and Isadora as characters. I think is great. I think it's awesome. Okay, yeah, I don't know if it's coming through. I'm pretty tired right now, and a lot of those supports were really dull. So I hope that I wasn't too dismissive of some supports that you guys enjoy. If as always, feel free to leave comments. I think you can do comments on Spotify now. I see when I post a new episode, it's would you like to enable comments on your Spotify? On this episode, and it defaults to yes. I don't think I've ever turned them off. So leave comments, or email me, or tweet at me, if you found that I glossed over something that you were more interested in hearing me talk about. Maybe I'll come back and revisit it. But otherwise, I think this is a pretty uninteresting group of characters for the most part. I think there's a few elements here and there that I like. I think Lowen, I'm pretty sure Lowen, and having gone through all of them at this point, I think Lowen is definitely my favorite of this group of four. And even he's there's a couple of things that I like about him, but he's not an amazing character or anything. And the others are just a little bit on the duller side in my humble opinion. Okay. So that's all for this time. Next SSS episode is going to be Heath, Vida, Legault, and Ninian. Are the ones that we're doing next time. And actually, we're going to be doing two. We're going to be doing two back to back. So it's going to be another main episode after this. Then it's going to be the one that I just mentioned, and then a second SSS episode that'll cover Fiora, Farina, Carla, and Corel. So look forward to those. Hopefully, almost all of them will be. I think I can definitely get all of those out by the end of the month. I think I can do everything. I think I could do all the SSS episodes. I think I could do all the main episodes. The part that might end up getting pushed back to 2025 is the wrap up, and if I decide, I think I'm gonna do an SSS episode for the Lords at some point as well. I'm not sure if I'm gonna combine that with the wrap up episode, or if I'm just gonna if I'm not, I'm not sure. But we'll see if I'm gonna do it separately. Okay, yeah, that's all that I had. So I hope you all have a nice rest of your day, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.